Welcome to episode 14 of Sibling Rivalry on my podcast India and the World. In the last episode, we saw the humiliating defeat of Pakistan at the end of the 14-day war in December 1971. Today, we look at the chaotic aftermath of that surrender. As the guns fell silent, the shockwaves of shame and anger started reverberating across Pakistan. Pakistan had suffered the worst military defeat in its short history. It had lost its entire eastern wing and 54% of its population. Nearly 93,000 Pakistani soldiers and civilians were now in Indian prisoners of war camps. India also occupied more than 5,000 square miles of Pakistani territory in the west. In 1965, the Pakistani army's formidable propaganda machinery had sold the near defeat as a resounding victory to its gullible public. But this time there was no spinning the obvious disaster as anything other than a crushing defeat. When the news of the surrender reached West Pakistan, riots broke out across the country. Angry crowds poured onto the streets, demanding General Yahya Khan's resignation. But despite the catastrophe they had brought down upon the country, Yahya and his fellow generals were trying to find a way to retain power. Even in these final days, Yahya was attempting to promulgate a constitution that would permanently entrench the military's political role. Desperate for a face that would be acceptable to the public, the military turned to the one politician who possessed both the popular mandate and the charisma to hold the country together, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Bhutto was then in New York, representing Pakistan at the United Nations. In the previous episode, we heard his dramatic speech at the UN Security Council, after which he had torn up his papers and stormed out. The performance made him very popular with audiences back home. Bhutto was urgently asked to return to Islamabad amidst the rising instability. Before leaving New York, Bhutto met the US President Richard Nixon. The US State Department had long viewed Bhutto's socialist leanings and close ties with China with suspicion. Ever the wily politician, Bhutto reassured Nixon that despite his earlier rhetoric, he was not anti-American. The meeting went well enough for the New York Times to remark that although Bhutto had often exploited anti-American sentiment for political gain, he now had the president's open support. And support from the US president is an important factor for the prospects of any Pakistani leader even today. Even before Bhutto's return, intense political activity was taking place in Islamabad. From New York, he was directing negotiations by telephone through his trusted Lieutenant Mustafa Khan with Yahya Khan's inner circle. The military itself was divided. A group of senior officers led by General Gul Hassan, the army chief, and Air Marshal Rahim Khan, the Air Force chief, were openly in favor of transferring power to Bhutto. The situation remained fluid, and Bhutto himself was uncertain of the outcome when he returned. When asked by the Washington Post whether he would become Prime Minister, he replied, "I don't know. I may be in jail next week." By the time Bhutto returned to Pakistan, the crisis within the military had reached a breaking point. On the morning of 20th December 1971, as the final transfer of power to Bhutto was being discussed, a meeting took place at the National Defence College in Islamabad. All the officers stationed near the capital had been summoned to hear an address by Lieutenant General Hamid Khan, the Chief of Staff. The mood was somber among the young officers who were devastated by the defeat and humiliated by the surrender. General Hamid Khan took the stage. Speaking confidently, he talked about the events leading to the debacle. failed negotiations with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the military crackdown in East Pakistan, Indian support to the insurgency, and the eventual fall of Dhaka. He showed little sign of remorse. Instead, his address appeared to justify the actions of the military leadership in a bid to restore confidence among the young officers. For 45 minutes, the audience listened in complete silence. When Hamid Khan finally invited questions, the dam burst. The first officer to speak, Major Minhas, declared that the entire nation should hang its head in shame. Another officer openly accused the senior leadership of corruption, nepotism, and malpractice. Others followed, attacking the general's strategy and the conduct of the war. A brigadier then rose, siding with the younger officers, shouted at the military leadership. Finally, another officer pointed towards the front row of generals and screamed, "They all deserve to be sent home." The meeting rapidly descended into an open rebellion. Officers shouted abuses at the generals. In their fury over the national humiliation, disciplined officers cast aside every military convention. Never before had such scenes been witnessed in the Pakistan army. General Hamid Khan's composure collapsed. The confidence with which he had begun the meeting vanished. Broken and visibly shaken, he brought the proceedings to a close and quietly left the hall, followed by the stunned senior officers. It was clear that the generalship had not only lost the confidence of the common people, but even that of their own command. Meanwhile, Bhutto arrived in Islamabad to a grand welcome. He stepped off the plane without any outward sign of the tension and pressure which he must have definitely been under. A large crowd had collected to cheer and welcome him, along with a hurriedly gathered group of diplomats. Prominent amongst these were the American and Chinese ambassadors. Bhutto immediately drove to the president's house from the airport. There, he had a closed session with Yahya Khan for a couple of hours, and then a brief transfer of power ceremony was arranged. Yahya Khan had lost the will to continue and morosely signed on the dotted line. A ripple of excitement ran through the crowds outside the president's house. Loud cheering broke out as Bhutto emerged in a car flying the presidential flag. Bhutto's assumption of power was greeted favorably by the world press as well. In an editorial entitled "Bhutto's the One," the Washington Post wrote, "Only a Nasser, someone expressing the subliminal longings of his people, could have survived the disaster of a scale which President Yahya Khan visited upon Pakistan. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who replaces him, becomes the first civilian to lead Pakistan since 1958. Bhutto held a press conference immediately afterwards, addressing the world through foreign journalists. He talked about holding direct negotiations with East Pakistan to prevent the breakup of the country. His message was also for the agitated officers of the armed forces. Cognizant of the prevailing sentiment against the top brass, he tried to reassure them that he had taken action against the fat and flabby generals.
East Pakistan is a part of Pakistan. East Pakistan will always remain a part of Pakistan. I want to enter into direct negotiations with our Bengali brethren, without any foreign occupation, without any foreign influence. We can cover the field among ourselves, from one end of the spectrum together. But the settlement must be between West and East Pakistan. Whatever that settlement is, it must be between us. I do not want to cover the past. I do not want to go into the past, because the past is a sordid past. It's a bad past, it's a terrible past. I don't want to say what impediments were placed for us to come to an understanding between Eastern Pakistan after the elections. That chapter of history will be written later. I don't want to touch upon it now. But we want a free slate, a clean slate, to arrive at a settlement between the genuine leaders of Bengal, of Muslim Bengal, and the genuine leaders of West Pakistan. And I believe we can come to a fair settlement within the concept of one Pakistan, of a united Pakistan. No matter how loose that federation is, no matter how loose that arrangement is, something tells me in my heart, intuitively, that we can swing it. I am prepared to make every effort to swing it. I am prepared to make every endeavor to swing it. So this is my message to the world and to the people of Pakistan. Have faith, have confidence in your elected leaders. I tell the armed forces, please be patient. I am going to restore communication with you. I have already taken certain action, strong action, which no ordinary man would have taken tonight, in removing some of the fat and flabby generals. And they are the Vaderas of the army. And we are against Vaderas everywhere. So please, the armed forces, believe me, we are part of the nation. We will support you. We will stand by you. We will redeem this day.
Bhutto's first task was a ruthless purge of the armed forces' top brass. He abolished the colonial era title of Commander-in-Chief, replacing it with the Chief of Army Staff. Incidentally, India had already taken this step in 1955. Bhutto appointed Lieutenant General Gul Hassan as the new army chief, deliberately refusing to promote him to a full general to stop what he called rank creep. But Gul Hassan's tenure was remarkably short. By March 1972, Bhutto felt secure enough to strike at the very men who had helped him into power. In a dramatic, almost mafia-style purge, Bhutto summoned Gul Hassan and Air Chief Marshal Rahim Khan to his office. After securing their forced resignations, Bhutto's political lieutenants Mustafa Khar, Mumtaz Bhutto and Jatoi actually forced the two military chiefs into a car at gunpoint and drove them away to Lahore to prevent them from rallying any loyal troops. To replace Gul Hassan, Bhutto appointed General Tikka Khan, a man infamous as the butcher of Balochistan and the architect of the initial bloody crackdown in East Pakistan. Tikka was a strict disciplinarian who had no political ambitions of his own, which made him the perfect loyal enforcer for Bhutto. Having decapacitated the old military leadership, Bhutto addressed the nation, declaring he had formally eradicated the threat of Bonapartism, the tendency of generals to act like politicians, from Pakistan Army. While Bhutto was securing his throne in West Pakistan, he also faced a massive diplomatic conundrum regarding the East. He held a very important prisoner in Mianwali jail, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the leader of Bangladesh. Bhutto desperately wanted to retain some sort of political link between West Pakistan and the newly independent Bangladesh. He moved Mujib from his prison cell to a comfortable rest house in Chashma. There, Bhutto held two secret meetings with Mujib in late December and early January. Mujib didn't know that Bhutto had bugged the room and was secretly taping their conversations. Bhutto laid on the charm, praising Mujib and pleading with him to agree to a loose confederation. "We will fight together, Mujib," he promised. But Mujib was nobody's fool. He knew the occupation army had been crushed, and he replied cautiously, "I have to settle matters there. The world will understand. I want your help." Mujib refused to commit to any constitutional link while still a prisoner. Bhutto realized he could not keep Mujib indefinitely. Releasing him was his best diplomatic card. By letting Mujib go, Bhutto hoped to look magnanimous on the world stage and, more importantly, secure Mujib's goodwill to help negotiate the release of the 93,000 Pakistani prisoners of war held in India. So in early January 1972, Bhutto released Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, allowing him to fly to London and from there to a hero's welcome in Dhaka. Before his release and departure via London and Turkey, Bhutto is reported to have told Mujib that as a quid pro quo for his release, he should help in freeing the prisoners of war and in not holding war crime trials. Bhutto is reported to have used the argument of solidarity among Muslims in support of his advocacy. He also repeatedly reminded Mujib of his own contribution to the Muslim League's struggle for Pakistan before partition, whatever the later differences and controversies might have been. With Mujib gone and the military purged, Bhutto turned his energy to foreign policy. Pakistan was internationally isolated and diplomatically crippled. Bhutto embarked on a whirlwind global tour to rebuild alliances and generate international pressure on India. His first stop, naturally, was China, where he secured promises of military assistance and diplomatic backing. He then conducted an exhausting 12-day tour of 14 Muslim countries across the Middle East and Africa, visiting places like Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Lebanon, and Iraq. He played heavily on Islamic solidarity, begging the Muslim world not to abandon Pakistan in its darkest hour, and urging them to pressure India into releasing the prisoners of war without demanding the formal recognition of Bangladesh. When the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand recognized the independence of Bangladesh, an infuriated Bhutto retaliated by pulling Pakistan entirely out of the British Commonwealth. He was playing a weak hand with absolute blinding aggression. Pakistan later rejoined the Commonwealth in October 1989 when his daughter Benazir Bhutto was the Prime Minister. And all this frantic maneuvering was leading up to the ultimate showdown, negotiations with India. India's Prime Minister, Mrs. Gandhi, held all the trump cards. She had the territory, she had the prisoners of war, and she had the military victory. But she also knew that holding 93,000 prisoners was a massive logistical and economic burden, and she genuinely wanted to establish a framework for durable peace on the subcontinent. In April 1972, the two nations finally agreed to hold preliminary talks at Pakistan's hill resort of Muree. The Indian delegation was led by D.P. Dhar, a brilliant Kashmiri diplomat and a close confidant of Mrs. Gandhi. The Pakistani side was led by Aziz Ahmed, the uncompromising head of Pakistan's Foreign Office. The Muree talks were a fascinating diplomatic chess match. D.P. Dhar arrived pushing for what the Indians called a package settlement, a comprehensive treaty that would solve all outstanding problems at once. This meant a formal no-war pact, the final resolution of the Kashmir dispute on India's terms, and the immediate recognition of Bangladesh. Dhar called this approach a bouquet of roses. But Bhutto, recognizing that caving to all these demands at once would be political suicide for him, vehemently resisted. He stepped into the negotiations personally and deployed his legendary charm. Smiling at Dhar, Bhutto cleverly countered the Indian demand, saying, No, not a bouquet of roses, one rose at a time. Bhutto insisted on a step-by-step approach. He argued that as the leader of a fragile, newly democratic government, if he was forced to accept a humiliating, all-encompassing treaty, he would be overthrown by the army and India would once again have to deal with a hostile military dictatorship. D.P. Dhar was actually quite taken in by Bhutto's performance. He was so impressed by Bhutto's eloquence and apparent sincerity that when Dhar returned to New Delhi, he praised the Pakistani president so fulsomely that he actually found himself under a cloud of suspicion back in India. Ultimately, the Muree talks did not resolve the core issues. They merely mapped out the agenda and established the ground rules. The heavy lifting, the final compromises, and the ultimate fate of the 93,000 prisoners of war and the captured territories in West Pakistan would have to be decided by the leaders themselves. The stage was now perfectly set for the grand climax. The supposedly mediocre Indira Gandhi and the flamboyant, unpredictable Zulfikar Ali Bhutto were scheduled to meet face to face in the historic Indian hill station of Shimla. Join us next time where we will take you inside the locked rooms of Shimla Summit, a summit filled with midnight drama, secret verbal assurances, and a treaty that would define India Pakistan relations for the decades to come. Thank you for listening. Please do consider subscribing to the podcast and do share the link with friends who may be interested. See you next time.